Good day, my friends. We're at 1 Samuel chapter 18. I think we were at verse 13. Therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. Notes. Evidently the administrative affairs of the kingdom had been neglected, with David now functioning somewhat in this capacity. In a sense, Saul actually promoted David, giving him the charge of 1,000 men, but David was no longer in the presence of Saul. Evidently Saul didn't know what to do with him because he was so popular with the people. Verse 14. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Notes, that was the reason for most of his blessings. Verse 15. Wherefore when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. Notes. He was totally trustworthy, and as stated, he behaved himself wisely, which naturally makes the flesh very, very scared. Verse 17. And Saul said to David, Behold my elder daughter Merab. Her will I give you to wife, only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. Notes. In other words, he's concocting this scheme to constantly send David out to battle, and Saul believed that he would ultimately be killed, which of course he desired. Verse 18. And David said to Saul, Who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? But it came to pass at the time when Merab Saul's daughter should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Meholothite, I think that's how you say it, to wife. Notes. Now, the king's promise to give his daughter to the victor was not kept, but on the contrary, a snare was set out for David's foot. Merab was indeed proposed, but upon the added condition that David should venture his life and slay more of the Philistines, and thereby, as Saul hoped, he would lose his life. But this plan having failed, the king laid another snare for him. He grossly insulted him by giving the bride a day or two before the marriage to another man. By this, no doubt, he hoped to sting David into some disloyal language or conduct that would justify him being put to death. Well, of course, this failed also. Verse 20. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, You shall this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain. Notes. In other words, David will marry the other daughter. Verse 22. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spoke these words in the ears of David, and David said, Seem it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am poor man and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this manner spoke David. Notes. To put it simply, they told Saul what David said, which means that David said nothing as it regards what Saul had done to him by giving his first daughter to another man instead of to David as promised. In other words, somehow he saw around what was going on. Verse 25. And Saul said, Thus shall you say to David, The king desires not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. Notes. Well, once again, this is the plan that King Saul has concocted. Verse 26. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. 27. Wherefore David arose and went, and he and his men slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. Notes. All of this was so known among so many people that Saul couldn't go back on this. Some may blanch at David killing so many Philistines, but however, you must remember that they were God's enemies, and in getting rid of them, David acted as God's servant and not as Saul's instrument. Verse 28. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass, after they went forth, that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. Notes. We learn from all of this that what God has blessed, nothing can really curse. Chapter 19. And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. Notes. Now, as we have repeatedly said, or I have said, the flesh always persecutes the spirit. Now, this is a spiritual war that began at the very outset with Cain and Abel, and will not cease until the final trump of God sounds. The biggest enemy tends to be the work of God. To the work of God is religion, which is a product of the flesh. That's where Satan does his best and most devious works. Religion is a concoction of man designed to reach God or to better oneself in some way. Well, no matter how good the religion might actually be, in any form it is unacceptable to God unless it is faith in Christ and what He did at the cross. Everything else is just absolutely worthless, no matter how much benefit it gives to the person itself. Verse 2. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David, and Jonathan told David, saying, My father seeks to kill you, who is Saul. Now therefore I pray you, take heed to yourself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide yourself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will commune with my father of you, and what I see that I will tell you. And Jonathan spoke good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been to you ward very good. Verse 5. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. You saw it, and you did rejoice. Wherefore then will you sin against innocent blood to kill David without a cause? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, As the Lord lives, he shall not be killed. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan showed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. Verse 8. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with the javelin in his hand, and David played the harp with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with a javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Verse 11. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him, and to kill him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If you save not your life tonight, tomorrow you shall be slain. Notes. Saul presents here a sad and terrible picture. One moment he's generous and kind, and the next he's murderous and cruel. One moment controlled by the Spirit of God, and the next by the devil. A useless and ruined vessel, his life was wrecked because he hated David. And apart from that hatred, little is recorded to lead to the belief that his public or private conduct was unworthy of a man and a king. And men would have little known that there was such depths of malignity in his character had David never appeared. David's person and victories made manifest Saul's true character. Chapter 19, verse 12, we must pick up in 1 Samuel. Thank you very much.